Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are setting off on a really fascinating microscopic expedition deep into the tissues that literally keep us alive. We're going to be looking at the architecture of the human body, but actually not the bones or the solid organs you might typically think of. Instead, we're diving into the dynamic, living pipelines of our internal systems. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. We'll cover the blueprint, the mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis, outer boundaries, and finally, the inside-out diagnoses. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the hollow organ blueprint. So, right off the bat, we need to establish what these tissues actually are. These structures, we're talking everything from the GI tract and respiratory tree, all the way to the cardiovascular and urogenital systems. They aren't just static blocks. Solid organs are packed with cell masses, right? But hollow organs? They're built around a central, empty space called a lumen. Basically, they are functional, layered tubes perfectly designed for transport, absorption, secretion, or propulsion. Think of the GI tract as our master blueprint for this. It's got a classic four-tunic pattern. You've got the mucosa on the inside, then the submucosa, the muscularis externa, and finally the adventitia or serosa on the outside. And the coolest part? Other tubular organs throughout your entire body are really just localized, highly adapted versions of these exact same four layers. Moving right along to section 2, the mucosa, or the luminal interface. Imagine the mucosa as your body's border patrol. It is absolutely fascinating to see how the luminal lining, the epithelium, literally shapeshifts to handle whatever local jobs it needs to do. If an organ needs protection from rough mechanical abrasion, like your esophagus, it uses a tough, stratified, squamous, non-keratinized epithelium. Need to absorb or secrete stuff? The stomach and intestines shift to simple columnar cells. For heavy-duty stretching in the urinary tract, it uses this distensible transitional urothelium. And for mucociliary clearance in the respiratory tract, pseudostratified ciliated cells. The tissue just perfectly dictates the function. Now, before we move deeper, how does this mucosal layer actually anchor itself down? Well, in the gut, there's a distinct, really thin double layer of smooth muscle called the muscularis mucosa. It lets the mucosa move locally. But the trachea swaps that out for a condensed band of elastic fibers called the elastic lamina. And then you have the endometrium in the uterus, which, incredibly, has no distinct deep boundary at all. Why? Because the uterus is constantly going through dynamic hormone-responsive remodeling and shedding every menstrual cycle. A hard boundary there just wouldn't make sense. All right, section 3, the submucosa, our metabolic highway. Drilling down one layer deeper, we hit the submucosa. This is the structural foundation that holds the whole operation together under pressure. It's made of dense, irregular connective tissue, giving it incredibly high tensile strength, so the inner lining can stretch without tearing. But it's not just biological glue, it's literally a bustling metabolic highway. It houses major blood vessels, lymphatic networks, and this crucial piece of neural wiring called Meissner's autonomic nerve plexus, which regulates local blood flow and secretions. This is where it gets really cool, looking at the regional adaptations inside the submucosa that protect the body from itself. Up in the esophagus, the submucosa has glands secreting a neutral mucin just to lubricate your food. But down in the duodenum, right after the stomach, the submucosa is absolutely packed with Brunner's glands. These pump out a highly alkaline mucus. We're talking a pH of 8.1 to 9.0, just to rapidly neutralize the superacidic chyme dumping out of the stomach. It's a built-in chemical defense system. Okay, so why the giant number 3? Well, it represents a massive multiplication factor that happens in the small intestine. Down there, structures called plica circularis pull the submucosa up into these permanent spiraling folds. By pulling both the mucosa and the submucosa up into these projections, the organ manages to multiply its absorptive surface area by a massive factor of 2 to 3. But wait, just when you think you've got the blueprint figured out, biology throws a curveball. This crucial layer, it completely vanishes in certain organs. No joke. In the gallbladder and the urinary bladder, the submucosa is entirely absent, meaning the mucosa just rests directly on the muscle. And in the respiratory tree, it's there in the trachea, but it totally disappears by the time you get down to the bronchioles. Section 4, the muscularis, aka the engine room. So, if the submucosa is the highway, the muscularis externa is the actual engine driving the car. It handles peristalsis, tone, and pressure. For classic tubular organs like the gut, the baseline smooth muscle pattern has 2 distinct bands, an inner circular layer and an outer longitudinal layer. Working together and coordinated by the Auerbach, or myenteric plexus, they create that wave-like mechanical force for peristalsis. But let's see how different systems hack this setup. The adaptability here is just absolutely wild. The stomach needs to aggressively churn food, right? So it adds a third innermost oblique muscle layer. The vas deferens needs rapid, high-pressure propulsion, so it rocks a super thick 3-layered wall. The ureter actually completely inverts the classic pattern. The colon condenses its outer layer into 3 distinct bands called tenucoli. And the uterus? It completely rewrites the script with 4 highly vascularized, hyperplastic layers that can grow massively during pregnancy. Think about the spatial timeline that happens every single time you swallow. In the upper third of your esophagus, you have skeletal muscle, meaning you have voluntary, conscious control over swallowing. In the middle third, it's a mix, and by the distal third, it transitions purely to smooth muscle for an involuntary autonomic rhythm. It's a literal, physical handoff from your conscious brain down to your autonomic nervous system. Section 5. Outer boundaries. Wrapping things up. Finally, we are out in the atmosphere of the hollow organ to see how it's packaged in the body cavity. There are 2 main wrappers, doing very different jobs. The tunica adventitia is purely loose connective tissue. It acts like a biological glue, merging with surrounding tissues to lock retroperitoneal organs firmly in place. On the other hand, the tunica serosa is a frictionless slipcover. It has a mesothelium lining that secretes fluid, letting intraperitoneal organs slide against each other smoothly without any friction at all. Now, what's really fascinating here is how a single organ can actually swap its outer wrapper depending on where it sits anatomically. Take the rectum. It's covered by slippery serosa in its upper third, but as it sinks down into the extraperitoneal pelvic space, it fully transitions to that anchoring adventitia. The urinary bladder does the exact same thing, serosa on the top dome where it needs to expand, and adventitia everywhere else to hold it securely in the pelvis. And finally, Section 6. The inside-out diagnosis. Okay, let's completely shift gears for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of a junior histopathologist. Imagine you're handed a glass slide. You peek under the microscope at low power, and you see a layered tubular structure. How do you solve the puzzle and figure out exactly which organ you are looking at? Well, if you systematically evaluate the tissue from the inside out, you can knock out possibilities instantly. Step 1. Look at the epithelium. See urothelium? Boom, urinary system. Simple columnar, you're in the GI tract. Step 2, check the demarcation. If you spot that muscularis mucosae, you're definitely in the gut. Step 3, assess the submucosa. Got Brunner's glands? You're in the duodenum. Step 4, check the muscularis pattern. 3 distinct layers? You might be looking at the stomach, or maybe the vas deferens. There's a golden rule from our source material that perfectly sums this up. Always evaluate the tissue systematically from the inside out. Because structure dictates function, right? So spatial awareness completely dictates your understanding. If you know the basic blueprint and you know how it adapts, you can literally map the entire human body at a microscopic level. We've explored the structural highways, the engine rooms, and the microscopic border patrols that keep your systems running day in and day out. So I'm going to leave you with this to think about. As you sit there right now, based on everything we've just uncovered about these blueprints, what incredible, hidden microscopic mysteries and structural adaptations are actively working inside your own tissues at this very second. Thanks so much for exploring the histology of hollow organs with me today.